With summer classes having just ended, I decided with this week of free time I was going to enter a game jam. Turns out the 8x8 game jam was the next day, so I took a look at the rules to see if I was interested. I wasn't overly interested in making a 2D game because I suck at drawing, but my boy Gorby asked the important questions. Despite breaking the host's mind, he was going to allow it. We were in. So this game jam doesn't really have a theme, which is great for some people, but for me, it was pretty rough because I already have low expectations going in. A theme just helps me get it out of the way faster. So, running low on ideas, I ran to the TeamSpeak. Hey dudes, y'all got any ideas for my game jam game? Oh yeah, what if you make Skyrim, but it takes place entirely on a beach, and you're a crab? Bro, I have like a week to make this game maximum. Well, that would give you time to make a beach and put a crab on it.
User in your channel was kicked from the server.
Believe it or not, that was the best idea I got out of them. So, like always, I was on my own. I decided to just keep it pretty simple and make a Doom clone, but instead of being Doom Guy, you were a demon coming to start your takeover of the overworld. I wanted to make a rigid body controller, but I kept running into issues, namely that I could not get it to move in the direction you were facing, and I'm pretty sure it had to do with this piece of code right here, because I should have used local direction. So I ran to Brackies for help. After his tutorial, I got this little controller set up and added a nice little squishy jump landing animation. And with that in place, I started working on some textures. This is how I did all of my textures for the game in Krita. That first texture you saw was a laser cannon, and this one right here is some snow, which never got used, but I used it as the side of the building. This is the wraparound texture feature. Here's a little terrain I put together using Unity's terrain editor. Here I am painting a road in because I figured the people would need an entrance to the science lab. In retrospect though, since it's like an ultra secret lab, they probably wouldn't have a road that you could just see from the Google Maps. But we got it in place anyways. I started working on my first 3D models that weren't the terrain. This was just a plane that you could apply textures to. I used it to make a chain link fence with a nice 8x8 texture. It had 4 panels on it, so it's technically like a 16x16, but each panel is an 8x8 texture. I added a fence post as well so that I could string them together and make a little compound. Ooh, that's a bug right there. But it was starting to get pretty late. So I was happy with the progress for the day. Got a little terrain, an enclosure, and a character controller that could jump and crouch and was hopefully not having any more crouch flying bugs. So I called it quits there. On day 2, I started by modeling my first weapon for the game. I had a little bit of experience with modeling in Blender, but the UV editing was something that was new, but thankfully it wasn't too difficult to figure it out once you figured out how to unstack the polygons from on top of each other. It still took me a lot longer than I expected to make the pistol, as you can see in the bottom right, but I felt pretty happy with the progress on it. I think the finished product was pretty nice as well. I then made a creature hand, which is what the player will see and what holds the weapon. But for some reason, it loses some detail when you transfer it from Blender to Unity. I don't know if it's the lighting or the texture or what, but it just looks a little bit different. I then added some idle animation and a little bit of jumping animation, but it had some skipping bugs that I didn't really like. It took me a little bit of time, but I finally fixed it good enough. Once this was in place, I started working on the secret lab itself. And in retrospect, I think there was probably a better way I could have done this. Maybe build it in Blender instead of in Unity, because Unity didn't really like it, and I had a tough time with it, lining everything up. But it wasn't too bad. except when it froze those 3 times, but we don't have to talk about that because I'm sure I was doing something wrong to cause all of that. In addition to that, apparently at one point it went from day 2 to day 3 while I was working on the lab, but I made no mention of it in my videos, and when I remuxed the recordings, all the dates and times got set to the same, so I don't actually know when it happened, but it happened. Later, after I finished the lab, I started working on the post-processing effects, and it went from this to this, which might be the proudest moment of the whole game jam, because after this, stuff was never quite as easy. Speaking of that, look at the amount of detail lost on the assault rifle. Unity, it has like 2 colors, and here it has at least 4 different shades of red, and I still have no clue why that happens when you move the textures to Unity. This one seems a lot worse than the other ones, so I think it has to do something with the textures. So on day 4, the internet was out for the entire day, which is fine because I didn't need internet to program, at least. Not that I knew of at first, but I wanted to set the weapon system up, and I was going to use scriptable objects so that each weapon would have an override fire method that could be overridden, so that each gun would have different firing characteristics. But I just could not figure out how to do this. I have another game that is still in progress, but it has an ability system, and I even wrote to myself, hey, assign the script, but when I try to assign the script, it doesn't work. So I had to make this really terrible spaghetti code to get it working because I didn't have the internet to figure out how to do it. I eventually duct taped everything together and got it working. What ended up happening is the character has all the weapons on them at all times, and it just turns the weapons off based on what you pick up. So if you pick up a pistol, it turns off everything else and turns on the pistol, and it's really bad.
Never use camera.main. It literally does this behind the scenes. Oh, the horror.
Well, wish I had seen this video sooner. On day 5, I decided we should probably make the guns fire. So that's what I did. Looks like it still needs to be tweaked a little bit. I was going to use a particle system. Instead, I decided to fully embrace the 8x8 jam way of life, and I made a highly emissive object out of an 8x8 texture that just turns on when you're shooting and turns off when you're not shooting. Looks a lot better for the shotgun. I later fixed the assault rifle to look better as well. After this, I decided we should have something that we can shoot, so I made a security robot, and I decided to give it wheels instead of legs because I don't actually know how bones work in Blender, but use the same UV editing style. He kind of looks like he's on Team Rocket. Here he is chasing the player around a little bit. I later added animations for moving and idle, but I didn't get any footage of that, so all we got is this masterpiece. I then started making the lab because I kind of figured we'd need a level, and we were starting to run out of time as we were already on day 5 or 6 or something. So I made a nice little light setup right here because it was pretty dark in the lab once everything was covered up. And I had to look at Marcus Aurelius for some reason, I guess. I don't really know. But I got the lights in place and things started to look a little bit more lab-like, but I needed a little bit of decor. So I created this little button system. It sort of acted as a puzzle. Oh, you can see some of the animation here a little bit better. But it was a sort of puzzle. Each button plays a sound when you activate it. And when you turn all the lights in the room green, you can run to the door and it'll explode and open. Day 7, it was actual crunch time, submission day, and my game still didn't have a full level. And it also didn't have a checkpoint system, so I didn't want to make the one level it did have too difficult where you'd have to die and start the entire thing over. This is also when I found out that level design might be my least favorite part of the whole process. I made it through though, and after I completed that first level and only level, I added a health bar, you see in the bottom left, and then I added a death screen. And I decided to build it for WebGL, which didn't go very well. So I just tried again because I figured it was just some kind of bug. And once again, no good. So I said, alright, I've already got the regular build made, so they'll just have to download it. That's fine. So I went to work on the profile picture for the Game Jam submission, or the itch.io page. And once I had it nice and pretty, I went to save it. Yikes. Scratch disk is full for the C drive, no problem. I'll just switch to the D drive. It has plenty of space. It's a 2 terabyte drive. It's not working. At this point, I panic stopped the recording and panic deleted tons of stuff off of both my drives and the computer in general and everything that I could find that I didn't need, and still no cigar. So I restarted it and it finally worked, but at this point we had so little time left that we were in a home stretch. We had like 3 minutes left on the submission or something. But I did get it in. You don't know how badly I wanted to set my computer's dot enabled to false with my foot though. After I submitted the game and got it in barely on time, nobody could see it. And I couldn't see it when I searched it up, but it showed up under my name when I made comments, so I was really confused. But just before you panic, make sure you go and set it to public and not draft, because I didn't do that and there was a whole fiasco, and I didn't even mention this. I just attributed it to a glitch, but then I later found out this was the issue, so thanks to the host for bailing me out, even though it was just me being kind of stupid. There was a lot of great games in this jam, and I haven't even played all of them yet. I do plan on it though, because I want to rate as many as I can, get as much experience, and give any feedback that I can while playing these games, but a lot of them are a lot of fun. I'd recommend checking them out if you get the chance. At the time of recording this video, the game's been rated 9 times and been played in browser 26 times, so I'm pretty happy with it thus far. I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody thinks about the game when the ratings come out, so that maybe I can see what to improve for the next one, because I don't think I'm going to continue developing this one. I feel like it's got a lot of issues that I don't really want to go back and fix, like the weapon system, but I do feel like I learned a lot from it, and it was definitely worth all the time spent on it. I'm going to leave some links in the description so you can get to the submissions for the Game Jam, and one for my game as well if you want to play it and leave some feedback. I'd greatly appreciate it, but other than that, I'll catch y'all on the flip side.